Hello and welcome to Conversations with the Minister for Corporate Affairs and Minority Affairs. Both very important subjects. Mr. Salman Khurshid, a veteran congressman. I suppose being a veteran these days is at a discount because youth is on a spiraling high. And Salman, you would not describe yourself exactly as youth today, would you?
Well, I would have if there weren't younger people around. But I think we've got some very bright young people around.
Salman, in both these portfolios, let's begin with one. From your vantage point as a Minister for Minority Affairs, how do you see the profile of the larger minority, say the Muslims? How would you describe it?
Well, I think we now have a lot of considered opinion, not simply instinctive, subjective opinion, but considered institutional opinion now in the country that there's a problem about the minorities, particularly the largest minority, that's Muslims, that it has to be addressed, it has to be understood, and that we need to work on it now with a sense of urgency. And I think with such a committee that's happened. Of course, it's raised expectations enormously, and there are people who say, well, nothing happened, you just talked about it and nothing happened. I think it's put a lot of pressure on all institutions to deliver. And I think we mean to deliver, and I imagine we will.
The condition of the minorities and the Muslims particularly, and I dare say the Christians must be equally bad, if not worse, from what I see in Orissa and elsewhere. The condition as described by Abu Saleh Sharif, and had he not been there, the minority, the whole Sachar committee report would have been a damp squib. So I think he's a fantastic team, him and Rakesh Basant and all these people. They came out with a remarkable. Now they have revealed that the condition of Indian Muslims is so poor, sometimes worse than the worst Dalits and so on. Who has brought them? Which government is responsible for having brought them to this pass?
Well, I think technically you can find answers to this, and technically you can say you've been there the longest, so you're responsible for it to the Congress party. But I think that would not be.
But don't you think that's true?
Well, it's true to the same extent as how much poverty there is, and it's true to the same extent as how much success there is. And are we responsible for sending man to the moon? Our moonshot, are we responsible for that? We are responsible for everything good and bad in that sense because we've had the longest tenure. But I think there are fundamentals that we have to understand. I think, and therefore, you then have to move back one generation or two generations to decide who's really responsible. And I think partition was largely responsible. It shook up the structure of Indian society, particularly of minorities, Muslims particularly so. And I think it's just taken a long time to recover from that. The cream left for Pakistan, and the runt was left behind. The leadership
you and I are the dregs.
We are the dregs, but we may be part of the cream that decided to stay. Somebody did stay back. Somebody chose to stay back. And somebody had no choice but to stay. Somebody had no choice but to go. And I think that it's very important to focus on those who intellectually, politically, and morally decided that they would not go, even if they had a choice.
The Sachar committee report, Sachar committee was set up in 2005.
Yeah.
But in 2004, the Ranganath Mishra Commission was given the frame of reference that you will find reservation for minorities as well, provided the minorities of a certain class.
Well, yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah, well, see, they've gone in parallel. Yeah, sure. I mean, let's get to the point that you want to make then.
The point I'm making is that there was this mandate, and then you found that you didn't have the data. So the Sachar committee provided the data. Now comes the Ranganath Mishra Commission report in 2007. A, clarify the sequence, and then I'll ask you the next question.
Yeah, well, I think more than the sequence, I think what is important is where do we stand with Satchar? As you said, Satchar provided you with the data. For the first time, objective government data said there is something wrong and you have to address it. What this Ranganath Mishra Commission does is its purpose was to identify the grounds and the basis on which minorities would be identified as backward. Now, part of that work was done by Satchar, but a lot of the rest of the part has been done by them. But I think they've done much more of analytical, subsequent follow-up work because of Satchar data being available to them. And what they've said is this is the way you can address it, i.e., through reservations. Now, on reservations, we have two routes, and we can talk about that. There's a route that's institutionally endorsed and available, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh model with some variants. And there is a route that's also proposed in the Ranganath Mishra Commission. And I think we can examine which one is more feasible, viable, and attractive in terms of political integrity of our system.
If we go to, say, Tamil Nadu, you have what? About 70% reservation?
Well, Tamil Nadu is an exception.
It exceeds the 50%,
yeah,
that Supreme Court has a ceiling. So, A, how did it manage to do that? And the various states can indeed do that?
Well, two things. One, Supreme Court has said that this is a prima facie ceiling of 50%. You can go beyond 50. We haven't known of any other state or any other case in which they've gone beyond 50. Andhra Pradesh tried to go to 51 for Muslims by adding 5% reservation for Muslims, and the court struck it down. So they are now back to 50, having reduced the 5 to 4. But Tamil Nadu does have, and that's a historical reservation, but it's not endorsed yet by Supreme Court. So I think as they come up to the Supreme Court finally, we will know whether Supreme Court is going to widen the exception or Supreme Court will finally say, get right back to 50.
Will communal reservations lead to communalism?
What all leads to communalism? I think a host of things. But this is a problem. But the moment you say communal reservations will lead to communalism, you become a target for being myopic, because people then tell you, well, caste reservations didn't make us into a caste-ridden society. Why should this communal reservations make us into a communal society? Now, it's true that the reservations in our constitution are for backward classes, not for backward castes. But I don't know of any class that's been identified for this purpose that is not a caste already. And therefore, when somebody says, well, why can't you then convert a religion into a class, or at least a portion of a religious minority into a class, it's difficult to say no. But the answer is, those amongst Muslims who need the reservation most are backwards. They're already in a list of backwards. We've given them reservation as a separate share or in addition to the 27 in Andhra Pradesh, elsewhere within 27%. And that's addressed, I guess, 80% or 90% of those who need reservations. Do we really need to open up a Pandora's box and look at another formulation that may or may not be acceptable to the courts of law? So I think that our commitment to follow the OBC route, I think, is a salutary commitment. It's a
very
doable.
Funny that Muslims never described themselves as OBCs, or in fact they preferred to be described as OBCs, even though most of the conversions really took place at a level which was more scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. Would you share that?
Now you're getting into a very, 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 very slippery area.
I'm getting into a very sensitive area, and the best thing is to discuss it.
Okay, we'll talk about it. And as far
I'll
as
tell
the
you what.
OBC, yeah.
Let us take a small break.
Okay.
Think about it, since it's a sensitive area.
You're giving me a breather.
And so think about it.
Okay.
And we shall be back after this